Pedro, Justin, we're here today to do something new on this channel, which is classic album reviews. And I think we're starting off with a big one. Opeth, Ghost Reveries.
Ghost Reveries.
There you go. There you go. There you go. You have it there. You had to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
It's your thing.
What I do.
All right, so you originally had mentioned this album to me when we tossed around the idea of doing a classic album review. We're going to be doing one of these once a month, and you kind of had tossed this idea around. The good people on Patreon voted for this record, amongst others that we had put forward. They voted for this record. They wanted to hear our thoughts on this classic album. Came out August 29th, 2005 on Roadrunner. I believe this was their first album that they released on Roadrunner.
Yep.
8th full-length record from the band. Swedish progressive death metal band, I guess you can call it that. I mean, like, everybody knows who Opeth is. I mean, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel here. But what makes this album for you a classic album?
Yeah, I mean, this album for me, like I said, Ghost Reveries was, what can I say? It's just a fantastic album through and through. But I think, like you said, everybody knows Opeth. But before this one came out, I think that it was actually because it was the first album on Roadrunner, it gave them more reach within the distribution circles in the world. So while we know and love Opeth today, I think this was actually the one that actually spearheaded them into kind of like the mainstream of metal. It definitely didn't sell out. They've just been progressing and becoming a new band. But just this one record, I think, was it was just a perfect record, to be honest. The songwriting's brilliant, the lyrics are brilliant, just the whole concept of the album's brilliant. And yeah, I can't pick a bad song off that album. And even the B-sides, they do the Soldier of Fortune, a cover of the Deep Purple track there. And it's brilliant. So, I mean, for me, this is just through and through an awesome record.
I don't agree with everything that you said, but we'll get into it. I mean, that's why we're here. But one thing I will say is I think this is perhaps an album that also starts to set the wheels in motion in terms of the Opeth that we currently have now. I think this is a defining record for the band because I feel like this is not only the album, like you said, that really opened the doors for a much larger audience being released on Roadrunner. Musically, I also feel like this is perhaps the record that starts to set them apart and perhaps put them on a new path in terms of what we currently have from Opeth today. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, a lot of people will say that Blackwater Park was the seminal record for Opeth. Personally, I love The Still Life. But for me personally, this album was the first one in a long time not produced by long-standing producers Steve Wilson.
Yeah, this was the first one that they had that wasn't done by Steven Wilson.
And that's why I like it so much. Because it's just, it's the guys kind of taking the bull by the horns and taking charge of their band, really. Sadly, it's the last album for long-standing guitarist Peter Lindgren and drummer Martin Lopez. But I think that what came after, of course, is another story altogether. But specifically this record, I think that just all the wheels were turning just the right way. The songwriting was there. Just, yeah, I don't know. I can't say anything bad about this album.
Well, for you, what are the standout tracks on this record? Do you feel like it's an album where you can pick some standout tracks? I mean, for me, there are two standout tracks. Like, do you see it that way, or are you just love it so much that you don't want to pick two tracks out of it?
I think the two tracks that I've listened to the most would have to be the opening track, Goes to Perdition. Mm-hmm. And in the middle, there's Reveries, Harlequin Forest, which is just a hands down awesome song. The single, I wasn't too, like, I love it, the Grand Conjuration, but it wasn't for me as good as those two.
For me, the Ghost of Perdition and the Grand Conjuration, those two tracks are just monster tracks. I mean, like, as a single, perhaps the Grand Conjuration is not the best one that they could have put forward when you think of singles. So it's kind of weird from that perspective. But in the context of the record, when you're listening to the album from top to bottom, it's an incredible song. I think it fits better into the record and into the listening experience of listening to the album than it does as a standalone single to introduce the record, if that
Yeah.
makes sense to you.
I think that I mean, if I was to pick a single, I would definitely have gone with like Ghost of Perdition. But it's really hard to cut that track down because it has so much vibe in it. You know, it's so
I don't think you can.
no, you just can't. It's one of those songs that you have to play from start to finish. And I have to ask you, when you first heard that the first time, there's the intro, it's like 9 seconds. I know when I heard it the first time, I had my stereo full blast. I just got the album. It was a birthday present from my father. So I put it in, and you know, the light intro comes in. I thought, oh, this is cool. And then all of a sudden, bam!
Yeah, I was
And
just
it's
gonna say the record doesn't give you a chance to simmer. Like it doesn't let you kind of like ease your way into it. It's almost
no,
like almost immediately it's just like in your face, like right away. Boom, we're here.
exactly. That's the cool thing about that record. I think it's just, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a well-produced album, to be brutally honest. It's just fantastic. But like I said, that opener scared the shit out of me when I first had it on. I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
I had written it down as one of my positives, or one of the positives that I took away from this record was that opening, because
Yeah.
normally now you start to see bands that put these intros built into the record or built into the opening song. They kind of like rolls out the red carpet for you and kind of gets you into a mood, into an atmosphere, and then you get into the record. You get into the meat and bones, almost like the appetizer. But this record almost skips the appetizer and you go straight into the main course. That's kind of how it's built. And because of that, it's just so pungent. It's so like in your face that you're like, okay, like, wow, now I don't know what the hell is going to come out next. So you're immediately glued to it because of that incredible start.
Yeah. And I mean, all the tracks on there, Baying of the Hounds, you know, even Isolation Years, the slower track, you know, it just works on so many levels and it's so well thought out. And I would say that if I was to have a negative point about this was meant to be a concept album. And, you know, we know one of the guys that's really good at those, you know, the concept albums. But this was meant to be a concept album. And Ghost of Perditions is actually one of those tracks that kind of introduces this concept. It's about a guy, you know, doing the unthinkable and murdering his mother. And that's why the opening line is Ghost of Mother. And I would have really liked to see where Mikke would have gone with that, you know, but I think all in all, I'm kind of glad that he did skip it, but I would have liked to heard like what he had in terms of other songs, what didn't make this record. Because I think had it been a concept album, I don't know, I think we would probably look at it a little bit differently.
You think we would look at it differently from a negative standpoint or from a positive standpoint?
I don't know. It would definitely tear the audiences because I think that you know, with this album, it was because of the song Isolation Years that he likes so much that he threw it in there, and it doesn't go with the concept at all. So I mean, I think that had he introduced that concept and just went all in on it, both negative and positive, I think the diehard fans would have loved it. But I think being the first record on Roadrunner, the mass distribution, people probably would have been like, this is their first introduction to Opeth and it's a concept record. And they're just like, no, maybe wait for the next one.
Yeah, it could be a little bit hard to digest. Like you said, not for the longtime fans of the band, but for those that are coming in new to them. I mean, this is their 8th record, but like you said, Roadrunner allowed them to have a much larger audience, create a much larger footprint. So even though this is their 8th record, for a lot of people, this almost felt like a debut record. So I think there's perhaps a little bit of pressure, maybe from the label or just pressure that you put on yourself from overthinking what people are going to expect from the record or what people are going to expect from you or what do you want to deliver, that it pushed the band, pushed the creativity aspect of this album in a different direction. It's hard to say. I mean, like, you know, we would be going back in time and redefining the record to see what would happen. It's always a hard thing to say in terms of if it would have gone better or it would have gone worse. It would definitely change a lot, and perhaps Opeth today wouldn't be the Opeth that we know that they are. So one little thing could change the whole dynamic of how that band went. And because I feel like this album was really, it really changed a lot for them going forward. You know what I mean? Like there was a little
Yeah,
bit of a shedding of a skin with this
yeah.
album.
I think that, like you said, like this would be kind of like the chaos effect, like the butterfly flapping its wings, and the typhoon on the other side of the world. But had they not gone with this album, I don't think the band would have been what they were. This was like for me, because I'm a huge Opeth fan, I still listen to their albums today that they put out. But this for me was kind of like where they peaked in terms of like the progressive death metal. On the next album, Watershed, new members, it's a new sound, a new dynamic, and that death metal grunting and stuff is still there, but they're sort of experimenting with new kind of like ideas.
It starts to disappear a little bit though.
Yeah, this is where it kind of like you go from, let's see here, it was like the Still Life, Blackwater Park, Deliverance and Damnation, and then goes to Reveries, and then it kind of just teeters off at Watershed, and then it starts to go into another. And this teetering is not a bad thing. I love the prog rock aspect of Opeth because that's who Nick Gay is. But it's a totally different band today compared to what they were on this record. So
no, this album not being a full-on concept record, it still allows you to lose yourself in it. At least me, when I listen to this album, I almost lose track of where one song ends, where the next one starts. It's a record that I feel that while we can pick favorite songs or standout tracks, I think it's a record that almost stands the test of time because of how good it is as a whole. Even though it's not Abigail, so it's not like you really depend on one song in order to give life to the next song and so forth. But it's still an album that when I listen to it, even today, when I listen to this record, I really want to give myself enough time to listen to it from beginning to end without being interrupted, because I feel like it's an album that needs to be digested in order, in sequence from beginning to end, because it's the whole record, is not just a collection of songs.
Yeah, and I allot that time as well when I listen to this one. But at the end of it, like when I'm done and it's kind of digesting, it's just like, is it over already? Like, it feels like I just put it on. Then you look at your watch, it's on, an hour's gone by.
Yeah. But it has that kind of playability. It allows you to lose track of time because you're losing yourself within the record itself. So it has an interesting dynamic. I really like that aspect of this album. I like albums like that. I like albums that make you want to sit down, take the time to listen to the whole record and not just give you the option, because perhaps of some weaknesses that the album has, of just picking your favorite songs and kind of skipping through the rest.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this record, when I first heard it, it was a process. It was like, whoa, there was just so much going on there that I just been bang hit by a Mack truck. It was just like, whoa, what happened?
Now, what's your thoughts on the vocals and guitars on this album?
Yeah, I mean, Petter is kind of a different player than Kulle, Fredrik, the current guitar player. So I think that actually Fredrik is a better lead player than Petter was. But I also like the dynamic that Petter and Mikkel had together on all the previous albums. There is just this flow, and they created a sound together that's kind of undeniable. It's Opeth, and they still use and incorporate that sound today. And the guitars were pretty integral parts in that sound. Also with the addition of Mendes on bass, like the guy is just a monster. He's one of my heroes when it comes to the bass guitar. And yeah, those guys together just created something so different. They went from a black metal band, from Orchid, and they went through like kind of like this satanic black metal phase. Coming to this, it was just, wow, what a progression. It was really fun to like go back and listen to all those earlier albums up to this one. And yeah, Michael's singing on this one is way better. His clean vocals are so much more refined than what they were on, say, Blackwater Park. You could hear that he was, kind of new to it. He wasn't really comfortable singing clean in those earlier records.
Yeah, I felt, and going into the vocals, and I'll give you my thoughts on the guitars, but going into the vocals, I felt that on this album, I really enjoyed the clean vocals. I enjoy the harsh vocals, but I enjoy the clean vocals. But I felt a sense of testing the waters, if you will. There was a sense of this is where I want to go, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get there, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
trying it out. But even that trying it out aspect didn't take anything away from how good they are on the album.
No.
And I felt like the harsh vocals gave the record a little bit of depth. They didn't feel just heavy, grunty, like in your face kind of thing. Like when he's using his harsher vocals on this album, I almost felt like the sound waves were coming. You know what I'm saying? Like it had depth to it. It made the sound overall feel a little bit bigger.
Yeah. I mean, I find that the growling on this record are more like an instrumentation, really. They're like another
More almost
instrument.
like an
Whereas,
atmospheric element.
yeah, and the clean vocals, while experimental, I think if you listen to a track like Ghost Reveries, there he's really testing the waters. But it's really why I like Harlequin Forest, because he comes onto that track with this pondus and this, like, you know, he's just so confident, and it sounds so good. And that's where the Opeth that we know today, because he sings predominantly clean now, he doesn't growl anymore. It was this record that really kind of spearheaded that, you know, that comfort zone for him. And he really shines on this record with the clean vocals, I found.
Yeah, I agree with you on the vocals. I think this is an album that really offers two different feels. I like the depth of the harsh vocals. I like the almost like atmospheric element that they give to the songs. But when those cleans come in, even though sometimes you feel like it's not necessarily, there's a little bit of a lack of comfort, if you will. You could feel it, but at the same time, there's what compensates for that lack of comfort, in my opinion, is the emotion that he puts forward in what he's singing.
Yeah.
He feels what he's singing, and because he feels what he's singing, that is able to balance out a little bit of those nerves, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, this record for me was like, you know, having listened to Opeth prior to this one, and you know, seeing the billings that they had, like when they came over to Canada and stuff. Like prior to this record, they were playing like small clubs and stuff like that. It was this record that like kind of like launched them onto like kind of the bigger stages. Really, it made them huge, and I think that that's because it was such a widely accessible record. It's got something for everybody, really. So they all of a sudden went from being like a, you know, progressive, like that word thrown around is kind of like a dirty word in some circles, you know. It's like, oh, progressive, like so you just stand over there and film that small stuff. But you know, for me it was just like this really kind of caught everyone off guard. There was something there for everyone, and I think that this record was responsible for making them bigger, and launching them onto the stages that they are on today. It's an integral record for them.
Now, I know you said earlier that it's hard for you to find some negatives on this album, but there's got to be something that you don't like. I know there's a couple of things I don't.
Well, what do you think? You let me know, and I'll see what you know.
I felt at times this album was a little bit bipolar. It gave me a little bit of a sense of not having a clear identity,
Right.
of trying to be one thing at the same time trying to be something completely different. And I can't put my finger exactly on where I'm getting that sensation, if it's from the sound, the song construction, or from the vocals. But I just feel like it's an album that it never gives me a sense of being 100% sure of who the record is, if that makes any sense. So I felt like that impacted it a little bit, because sometimes it's okay for me to lose myself within the record because I'm enjoying the album and you kind of lose track of time. But it's not good when you lose yourself within yourself. And there was some songs or some moments within the record that I felt that it tried perhaps too much, and I was losing myself within myself. And it just felt like that it was overreaching, and it needed to be a little bit more clear, a little bit more direct. Those are the only things. It's not something really specific. It's more of a feeling that I get when I listen to the album.
Yeah, I mean, when you listen in context of what was being released at the time, I mean, like in the States and in Canada and stuff like that, this was kind of a, you know, this band really was a unique band. They still are. But, you know, you listen in context to what was being released at the time. You had like Lamb of God and Slayer and, you know, this American sound, you know, North American sound. And people were kind of used to that, you know, down-tuned guitars and, you know, grunting, and, you know, the drums are really kind of like up in the forefront and in your face, really clicky drum sounds. And that was kind of for me like a breath of fresh air when I heard this. I was like, oh, thank God, that's so nice to get some vibes. But I'm a progressive metal guy as well. Like I love that genre, and I love progressive rock as well. I know you're not a huge
I'm
fan
not a
of it,
huge fan.
but for me, this was kind of like a breath of fresh air, really. It it is what it is. I understand what you say. It is schizophrenic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's has a little bit of that. I'm glad I'm
But
not the only one who feels that way.
I think that
You think that's
I like the fact. I like the fact that it's schizophrenic, because like when you're going in from like Beneath the Mire from Baying of the Hounds, like there's like kind of this eerie ambience between the two tracks. But I really liked that. It was kind of like from going from Ghost of Perdition, Baying of the Hounds, and then just like whew, take it down, take it down, take it down, and then come back up again with Reveries and Harlequin Forest. It's, I don't know. I just thought it was masterfully crafted. But I can agree that it is schizophrenic. It's really hard to go from this bang on in your face, like I'm gonna run you over, to oh, let's sit in the fields and kind of like unwind a bit.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes it's hard for my brain to process that change that happens abruptly almost. So by the time I start to process it and realize where I am, I'm halfway through it. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's just it allows me to have a little bit of a hard time to fully connect with a record when albums have this nature. And I felt like this one perhaps had a little bit more of that than others. It just has that controlled chaos, if you will, within
Yeah,
itself. You know.
I think that songwriting wise and stuff like that, like Miguel was always really good at kind of building this up, and I don't know, I put that to him like at the time of when he was writing this. Like he's always been a guy that kind of has ups and downs. So I think that that kind of plays on this record. Like I said, it was meant to be a concept, and then he threw Isolation years in. So his thought process is also a bit schizophrenic when he's trying to write a record. But I found actually the follow-up was a bit more schizophrenic. That one took me a long time to digest, Watershed. But everybody has their own Opeth records that they.
That's a different discussion for a different video.
Exactly. But this record for me, like I said, it's a home run. It's just a great record.
I think it's definitely a defining album, not just for the band, but for the metal world in general. It's an album that really changed perceptions, changed things, and definitely changed things for them.
I think one thing that's really cool is on this record, I don't know if you listen to a band like Soen or something like that, but Lopez is now in Soen. And when you listen to like their heavier tracks, you can hear a lot of this album in those tracks, just because of the groove that he has and the way that he plays. So I think he had a big hand in actually incorporating those vibes, because he's a totally different drummer. And that's one thing I miss on the later records. Like I love Axenrot, but Lopez was just this phenomenal drummer. So I think this was a perfect record to end his Opeth tenure, and move on to other things. Just the best record possible he could have done that. So
yeah, leaving on a high note.
Yeah, he just took he wasn't feeling well at the time. And one thing that I loved about this record as well, like when it came out, like Roadrunner had this thing of like doing like these special editions. Like this is the Digipack, and they got like the DVDs that came with it and stuff like that. So I always thought that was kind of cool, like a little extra. And the documentary on this one is actually pretty insightful and pretty cool.
And Roadrunner for me back in the day was one of those labels that because we didn't have, when I talk about back in the day, I'm talking about like early 90s. We didn't have the information that we have today with internet access and all of that stuff. And I remember that if I saw an album at the store and it was a Roadrunner record and I never heard of the band, I would feel very comfortable in picking it up because they were always consistent in terms of the bands that they signed and the material that they released.
Well, you look at the guy that was spearheading the AR department at the time. The guy was a genius. Was his name Monty? Is it? But yeah, just a legendary, A&R guy, and he's signing up all these bands. And of course, the smart move would be, oh well, Damnation and Deliverance did pretty good, so let's take these guys and
let's bring them into the fold. Yeah, exactly. Well, excellent. On that note, this is it for our talk, for our chat, for our review of classic albums. We started with Opeth. We don't know where we're going to go next, but for those of you watching this video, use the comment section below. Let us know what other classic albums you would like us to discuss. We're going to be doing one of these videos once a month. So hit us up. Let us know in the comment section what other albums you think are iconic that you would like us to kind of dive into it. And then, you know, we'll pick one and we'll be back next month for another discussion about another epic album.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time. This was a blast.
Yep. Always a pleasure.
All right. Cheers.